Hey everybody, Misty Williams here from Healing Rosie, and super excited about our Facebook Live today. And I know you guys are too. We've gotten some great comments about this awesome conversation I'm going to have with our friend Trudy. So if you've been active in our community, you know that anytime someone has questions about anxiety, depression, anything dealing with like mental health, Trudy always gets tagged and Trudy always comes to the rescue because she has really made it her life's work to help us understand how to navigate a lot of these mental health issues using amino acid therapies and really understanding what's happening in our body and the kind of modifications that we can make with diet and lifestyle so that we enjoy a better quality of life. And it's very, very important work what you do, Trudy. And so I'm so glad you're here.
Yay, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you. And I just adore your community and what you're doing there. I just think it's so great. So it's only a pleasure to be available. And it's always lovely that you tag me and I'm able to hop in and try and help a little bit. That's great.
Yeah, well, I think that for a lot of us, we've really made a commitment to our health and to finding ways to heal the root cause. And we have so much help in our space from amazing doctors and practitioners who understand things like thyroid and autoimmunity. But, when we move into this more mental health kind of space, when we're having a lot of trouble sleeping at night, when we have that racing mind, when we're dealing with anxiety and depression, and a lot of these things that don't kind of fit into that, typical functional medicine box, it can be hard to know what to do except take the antidepressants or, follow these other conventional treatment paths that inside of us, we know that the drugs probably aren't the best for us, but we feel kind of stuck and trapped. And the work you're doing is so important because you're giving us all options and you're really helping us to navigate this path. And for those of you who don't know, Trudy has her 5th anxiety summit coming up. And we
Yay.
are super excited about that. Yes, we are so excited. Of course, I'm going to be speaking on her summit, and you can just bet that she's going to have the very best interviews with so many wonderful experts with anxiety and depression and all sorts of topics. And one that I really love, and of course, as you guys know, I have my sleep event coming up, and Trudy's going to talk to us about sleep and its connection to this whole puzzle. So this is a really important part of holistic health and healing. And I'm so grateful, Trudy, that you've really kind of answered the call and are stepping up to help all of us learn to navigate all this.
Well, it's a pleasure. And, I feel really strongly about this and really passionate about this and the work that I do because I've lived it. And I had terrible, terrible anxiety in my late 30s. I had panic attacks. I just remember that first panic attack. I had no idea what it was even. I didn't even know where it was coming from. And it was terrifying. And I had big sleep problems. I got social anxiety where it was difficult for me even to have family around. Everything just felt so overwhelming. And I remember the PMS that I had was just dreadful. I was a basket case for 3 weeks out of a month. And then that 1 week where I felt reasonably okay, that's when I started digging and reading and learning and searching for answers. And at that time, I mean, that was 20 years ago, there wasn't as much available online as there is now. I remember that first panic attack, I was absolutely wiped out, and my husband spent all night on the computer trying to look for answers. What was this? Was there a solution? What can I do for my wife? And it was challenging then. And now with what we have available to us in these summits and the amazing books and online and Facebook groups like your group, we've got support, we've got community, and we can get answers a little bit quicker. So because of what I went through, I want to help other women. And I remember once I started getting through it and I started to feel a lot better, I wrote letters to all my girlfriends and I said, this is what happened to me. This is, just be aware this might happen to you. At the time, I remember one of the doctors that I went to mentioned the word menopause. And I thought, what? I'm 37. This menopause thing, I only have to think about when I get to, 50. Where does this come from? And then I started reading books on perimenopause, and I didn't even know what the term was at the time. And I just thought, if this is what's going to happen to every single woman, I need to let all my girlfriends and all my family members know this is coming, because I didn't want it to be a surprise for everyone. And I think so many of us women get to this age of, late 30s, sometimes it's earlier. I'm seeing it happening younger and younger now. Or some people, it only happens in their late 40s, maybe in their 50s. But it sort of hits us like this brick wall. Where on earth did this come from? I know you had similar issues. You just thought, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
And we just don't get the support that we need. I went to the doctor. I was working in a computer job at the time, and I thought I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't think. I couldn't concentrate. I thought, I'm losing it. I'm going to lose my job. And I went to the doctor, and they said, they did a brain scan just to make sure nothing, serious was going on. That's how bad I felt. And wasn't needed, obviously, but I'm glad it was done. But I remember being offered an antidepressant. And I said, I'm not depressed. There's something else going on. I just need to get to the root cause of this. So I'm glad you mentioned the medication aspect, because that's what most people are offered. Take this antidepressant, take this anti-anxiety medication. And as you know, and your community knows, you've got to get to the root cause of the problem. And this summit that I'm hosting in November is the gut-brain axis. And gut issues are one possible root cause of anxiety. And if we can address those gut issues, then we don't need to resort to a medication. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't even know that there are other options. So I'm excited that there are, and that I can share them and hopefully help other women going through this.
Yeah. Well, it's very common for women to go to doctors and have whatever set of symptoms that they're experiencing. Yours was a panic attack. For me, it was, I have this unbelievable brain fog, and I'm absolutely wiped out, exhausted. And, eventually a couple of years into it, because the heavy metals that they drilled out of my mouth, I started having all these weight issues, and everything was, oh, you're really upset. Your labs are normal and things are fine. Maybe we need to put you on an antidepressant. So, they're very overprescribed. If a doctor can't figure out what's going on or doesn't have an answer for whatever the symptom set is, it's really easy to kind of turn to an antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication to, kind of get someone's brain, I guess, to shut off, or maybe their way of silencing us. But it's really important, as women, that we realize, number one, that is happening. And if it does happen to you, you don't have to take whatever the doctor is prescribing, that there are other options. And then we just need to open this conversation up and just have real talk about what's happening, for all of us. I mean, there's definitely been times in my life where I'm going through something really hard and challenging, and I'm dealing with a lot of stress. And I remember, Trudy, in an interview that you and I had about a year ago, having this epiphany that, like, I talk about anxiety with the word stress. I'm so stressed, or I'm overwhelmed. I may not say I'm anxious, but it's all the same thing, and you can't hardly get through life without being confronted with really stressful, overwhelming moments. I mean, this happens for all of us, whether it's major challenges in your relationship, whether it's big challenges in your career, losing a job, dealing with a promotion, having a boss that's just out of control, being really unhappy in your work, something's happening with your kids. I mean, life can be really stressful, especially in the Western world with the way that we live. And these tools are so, so important. And, this summit's going to be amazing. I want you guys also to know that Trudy has an amazing book called The Anti-Anxiety Food Solution. Did I get that right?
You did, yes.
And, this is when it's in my library. This is something that I reference when these issues start cropping up for me, for people that I love, for women in our community. This is like a reference book. And I think everyone should have this book in their library, because at some point you're going to need it. At some point you're going to hit a wall in your life, and you just need tools. And that's what we all need. And that's what this summit is all about, is presenting you with a set of tools that you can use and you can reference when these issues are coming up for you, so that you don't feel like the only thing that you can really do is take the medicine, whatever's being prescribed for you. So why don't you start, Trudy, with serotonin, because I think a lot of people know what serotonin is. A lot of people know that they might be low in serotonin. That's probably one of the more common words that is thrown around when we start talking about depression and anxiety. I'd love for you to educate us a little bit on that. Talk to us about low serotonin and some nutritional approaches to supporting our serotonin levels.
Okay, and you're right. We'll often think of serotonin when it comes to depression, but there's a kind of anxiety that also has low serotonin. So I'm going to talk about both of those.
Great.
And I'm glad you mentioned that some people don't resonate with the word anxiety or anxious. They might say stressed or overwhelmed. But some other terms that you may resonate with if you've got low serotonin is this sort of ruminating thoughts, like lying awake at night, and you just
Right.
can't switch that busy mind off. Some people refer to monkey mind, and they've just got this reprocessing, and they're thinking about something they said or something they did. Negative self-talk, so just like everything you say is just like, oh, I'm useless, or I'm not good enough, or this often you'll hear this term imposter syndrome in the business world. Like successful women will say, how did I get here? Someone's going to catch me out. I'm going to be found out. That can be related to low serotonin. You mentioned insomnia. So if you are not able to sleep, and this is one possible cause of insomnia, it can be related to low serotonin, because serotonin is converted into melatonin, which helps us sleep. And then the big thing with each of these neurotransmitter deficiencies is a cravings aspect. So there's a mood aspect and a cravings aspect. And with low serotonin, it's the afternoon and the evening craving. So if you find that you need something sweet at the end of the day to help improve your mood, towards the afternoon or even in the evening, like maybe after dinner, you just have to have something sweet, and you've got these other low serotonin symptoms, which can also include anger issues, rage issues, irritability, PMS, any kind of hormonal issues, sort of menopausal, perimenopausal symptoms. Those are all clues that it could be low serotonin. And this was one of my issues that I discovered. And using an amino acid called tryptophan, taken as a supplement, can eliminate these symptoms. And then it gives you a chance to start digging deeper, because you've got to think, well, why have I got low serotonin? Is it because I've got leaky gut and I'm not absorbing the nutrients from the food that I'm eating? And then why do I have leaky gut? Is it because of gluten, for example? And we know that when someone has gluten sensitivity or celiac disease, serotonin levels definitely go down. We know zinc levels go down, as zinc is needed to make serotonin. So we've got this sort of vicious cycle going on, but we've got to back it up and say, well, what's the root cause? Often it goes back to the gut, which is why I'm hosting the summit on the gut. But until you figure out the gut issues and you deal with them, which can sometimes take a while, figuring it out, doing the testing, figuring out, is it leaky gut? What is the root cause? You can use something like tryptophan to start addressing the low serotonin and giving you results right away, because we want to feel hope and we want to get some results pretty quickly. And this is what the amino acids do. They give you results very quickly. So tryptophan was one of the amino acids that I used. And I've used it on and off since then in different situations, because our serotonin can take a dive seasonally, like in wintertime. If you are prone to the winter blues and you get more anxious in the wintertime, it could be that your serotonin's taking a dive. And you may be the kind of person that needs to support serotonin, in wintertime as well.
So why don't you talk to us a little bit about kind of this cascade? Because one of the things that I've really learned from you, and I'm sure this floats around in our space, maybe I didn't pick up on it because it wasn't communicated in the way that you communicate, but like there's all these precursors to the things that we hear talked about, like GABA and serotonin and melatonin. I think it would be really helpful if maybe you would just kind of draw the map for us of, what leads to what leads to what, so that we kind of get an idea of how all of this is connected together. And we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. You could go fast. People can make their notes and go study it later. But I just think you putting it out there would be really fantastic.
So think about, if we're talking about low serotonin. So serotonin needs some raw materials in order to be made. One of them is tryptophan. Tryptophan and 5-HTP can be used to make serotonin. And then, as I said, serotonin is then used to make melatonin. But before we get to the serotonin part and the tryptophan part, there are other nutrients that can help to make our neurotransmitters. One of them I mentioned is zinc. So zinc is really important. It's called a cofactor, and it's needed to make that conversion to serotonin. Another one is vitamin B6. And vitamin B6 is really great for inflammation. It helps to reduce inflammation. It helps to make that conversion to serotonin. And it is very commonly deficient. Both zinc and B6 are very commonly deficient. And I mentioned that I had the social anxiety issue. Pyroluria is a social anxiety condition that needs high levels of zinc and B6. So if you have this genetic condition and you are really stressed, you lose a lot more zinc and B6 than the average person. So now you're losing, there's another root cause. You're losing, that stress is causing you to dump the zinc and the B6. Other nutrients that are needed to make serotonin are magnesium, really, really important. Folate, really important. And this is where methylation comes in. There's this methylation cycle and there's the BH4 cycle that makes our neurotransmitters. And if we've got methylation issues, we're not going to be able to make that serotonin. And then I mentioned the gut. We make so much serotonin in our gut. We actually make 95% serotonin in the gut. Dr. Perlmutter on the Anxiety Summit talked about this. Dr. Peter Bongiorno talked about this. So we know that so much is made in the gut. So if we have poor gut health, that's going to affect how we make serotonin. We're not going to have the raw materials for a start, and we're not going to have that good bacteria that helps us to make serotonin. So there's many steps that come into to the point where now we've got good serotonin and we're feeling calm, we're feeling confident, we're feeling happy, we're feeling smiley, and we've got. So you just heard me describe many steps that take to, get us to the point of supporting our serotonin. But what we do with tryptophan as a supplement, it's like a shortcut. It gets us there very quickly. And then we've got to still go and deal with all those other things. We can't just say, oh, well, I've got low serotonin. Let me just take tryptophan and that's it. I don't have to do anything else. We've still got to go and do our homework and fix everything else. Mm-hmm. Those things take longer to deal with. So did that help a little bit?
Totally. And I really like how you talked about serotonin making melatonin, because I know that for a lot of us, when we're actually feeling a lot of that anxiety, it's like hard to fall asleep. And so just knowing that there's a pathway here can be really illuminating as we're looking at how do I treat my own N equals 1, right? My unique biology. I find it really useful from the hormonal perspective too. I talk a lot about, LDL cholesterol plus vitamin A plus T3, which is your thyroid hormone, is what makes pregnenolone. And then there's a cascade over. So people can start to see, oh my God, I'm having hormone issues. My hormones are low. I need to check my thyroid and I need to make sure I'm getting enough good fats. And I need to make sure I'm getting vitamin A and absorbing vitamin A in the gut, So there's just knowing how everything connects together can be really illuminating as we're, figuring out what we're going to do with our own health. So why don't you talk to us about GABA? I knew about this much. I knew GABA was a thing, barely, but I didn't know what the thing was before learning a lot from you in your work. So why don't you educate us about the GABA side of the anxiety picture?
Yeah. And GABA stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. It's both an amino acid and a neurotransmitter. And I said just now that anxiety could be low serotonin type of anxiety. It can also be a low GABA kind of anxiety. And you could have both. And both low serotonin and low GABA can affect your sleep levels. So just like I said, sleep has many possible, insomnia has many possible root causes. One of them is low serotonin. One of them is GABA. High cortisol can make you stay awake as well and can actually also trigger anxiety. So as you said, we've got to figure out what our root causes are and address them. It's not the same for each person. But with low GABA, instead of being a mental kind of anxiety or a mental kind of lying in bed awake and not being able to go to sleep, it's more physical. So you'll feel that physical tension in your body. You'll feel stiff. You'll feel it in your muscles. You may feel it in your belly. And again, there's cravings. Often you'll crave to relax. So you'll use carbohydrates to relax or wine. Wine is a big thing. Get to the end of the day, you've got to wind down at the end of the day. And if you find you're drinking a lot of wine or you need wine to relax and to socialize, that's a clue that it could be low GABA. And then you use a GABA supplement to raise your GABA levels. And I call myself a GABA girl. This to me was my lifesaver when I had my anxiety. The tryptophan was great. But I found that GABA was more of my issue. It was more this physical tension, and it helped my sleep. It helped the physical type of tightness that I would feel. And it's amazing. Again, like supporting low serotonin, when you use the amino acid, you get very quick results. I didn't say this when I was talking about serotonin support, but you get results using an amino acid within 5 minutes. That's how quickly they work. So it's not something that you say, oh, well, I'm going to try it and see in a month's time, is it helping me? If it's not helping you within 5 minutes, so I do a trial. I'll have my clients rate their symptoms on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm feeling tense. I've got this feeling in my gut. It's like a 9 out of 10. I take some GABA. Within 5 minutes, I should go, I just feel like I had a glass of wine. That's the kind of feeling you want, a wow effect really quickly. And then you deal with all the other underlying causes, but it gives you results very quickly. And then you can, you've got hope and you feel, okay, now I can handle it. Now I can deal with the fact that I'm, being told I might have to give up gluten, or I'm being told I might have to give up my wine, heaven forbid, or, or my caffeine, coffee's a big thing. We didn't talk about coffee. We've got to think about the caffeine, and is that triggering the anxiety as well? But the amino acids give you that instant relief. And it's, and interesting enough, I love to look at the research, and there's a new study that just came out saying that GABA also causes these unwanted thoughts. So we've always thought about these sort of ruminating thoughts as being a low serotonin thing, but for some people, the low GABA can also cause these unwanted thoughts or the sort of busy mind. So it's quite hard to sometimes tease it out. But the great thing is, you look at the symptoms, you do a trial of the amino acid, and you see, is it working? And then you know if it's working. There's no urinary neurotransmitter testing that needs to be done. It's simply looking at your symptoms, using the supplement, and then looking at your symptoms afterwards. And then not just, there's no one size fits all as well. You start on a low dose and you increase based on how you are responding. If it's working well, that's great. If it's not working at 100%, then you go up. If it's not quite working enough, then you go up again.
Yeah. Well, this is such an awesome opportunity we have to actually learn how all of this stuff is connected to our gut health. And I would love for you just to help people understand what the brain gut axis is. I find that a lot of people aren't really aware of like the role of the vagus nerve and connecting these two parts of our bodies, and kind of how the biochemistry starts, in our gut and kind of works up to our head. Why don't you help us to understand that a little bit better?
It's fascinating. It really is. And when I was digging into the research in preparation for the summit, if you go to PubMed, where all the science studies, well, not all of them, a lot of them are found, and you search for gut-brain axis, you'll find that over the last 10 years, that's where I think 95% of the studies have been done. So it's really new, it's growing, and you just can't help but hear, about the gut-brain axis. So it's basically this two-way communication between the brain and the gut. And your thoughts can affect your gut and your digestion, and your digestion, and then how you're making neurotransmitters. If you've got parasites, if you've got candida, if you've got leaky gut, if you've got dysbiosis, if you've got SIBO, that can then communicate with the brain and affect your mood. So it's this two-way communication, and it's very powerful. We can't just say anxiety or depression. It's a mental thing. It's all in the head. There's a very, very, very physical aspect to it as well. And that's what we're trying to address when we address the gut issues. So yes, the taking GABA or taking tryptophan is helping you to feel better mentally, but believe it or not, it's also helping your gut as well. So there's so much research showing how supporting serotonin helps your gut. One study that I talk about in one of the interviews I do is about how 5-HTP actually improves motility. So here now we're taking 5-HTP, which is another precursor to making serotonin. You could use tryptophan or 5-HTP, but you take 5-HTP, it's going to help you feel less anxious. It's going to help you with switching off that busy ruminating mind. It's going to help you possibly sleep, and it's going to help the gut. So if you've got SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and you've got motility issues, it's going to help there as well. We see research on GABA helping with the visceral pain that we have when we've got SIBO or when we've got IBS. So it's very interesting how the addressing the gut helps us with our mind. And it's, for some people, it just feels absolutely foreign, but it's fascinating. We see it in the research, and we see it all the time with
And what's so
clinically.
powerful about this, I'm just thinking about the times in my life where I've gone through maybe a stressful or anxiety ridden time, and it affects my mood. It affects the way I'm showing up in the world. It affects how I'm interacting with other people. And we can be so hard on ourselves, especially as women, when we look back and we think, we don't like how we behaved in a certain situation, or we don't like how we showed up, or we feel a lot of shame about what happens to us when we find ourselves kind of in these loops. And the really liberating thing about what you're helping us to understand is that we don't have to identify with those moods and those things as who we are. We can see that something is off in our biology and our biochemistry that we absolutely can affect. And we can be the kinds of people that we know in our heart and in our soul that we really are. And it's very powerful to have these kinds of tools. It's one thing to try to tell yourself, I'm going to give you grace, Misty, for what you just did in that situation. And it's another thing to be like, what, there's some things I can do. I need to start looking at how I can better support my body so that I can handle these situations better. And I think for a lot of people, that kind of empowerment is like, whoa, that can be life altering.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah, this is very, very important work. I hope everybody will sign up for the Anxiety Summit that Trudy is putting on. Take advantage of all these experts. I mean, she has hand curated this event to really give us all the support that we need in navigating this area of our life. And one of the things I love about Trudy is she puts so much time and homework and energy into curating something that she knows is going to be a blessing to you and of value to you. So Trudy, thank you for this amazing labor of love. I know that it requires so much energy, such a big commitment of time. And I know that you're doing it because you feel, like I feel, and a lot of great experts in our space feel that this work is really important, and we care as much about the career aspect as the heart aspect. We really, really want to make a difference, and we don't want to see our sisters and our brothers suffering needlessly when the information is there. It's just a matter of getting it out. So
yes, it is. And it was just so wonderful to have the opportunity to interview you as well. We don't want to forget that. Misty's speaking on the summit, and we're talking about community and advocating for yourself, and we bring it back to the gut, because in our interview you talk about your gut health and what you've done. We actually talked about fecal microbiota transplant that you did, and that just brings it back to the gut. And we talk about fecal transplant in the SIBO interview, and also Julie Matthews talks about in her autism interview. And I just want to encourage folks to listen to all the interviews, because you might think, oh, autism, that doesn't apply to me. But as I said in the interview with Julie, the kids with autism are the canaries in the coal mine. So what we see that happens with them, we can extrapolate to say, well, if it's happening to them, what else, how else is it affecting us? So it was great. It was as you know, doing a summit, it's a lot of work, but it's so rewarding, and I get to learn and I get to share. You asked about the vagus nerve, and it's part of this communication between the gut and the brain. And I had an amazing interview with Dr. Habib Nawaz. And one of the things that actually activates the vagus nerve is being sociable. And that's what you've done with this community is this connection and this being sociable. So there's so much that we can do to help to start to heal the gut and to start to feel better. And just knowing that there are options, and that the gut is a big part of it, I think is just so important.
Yeah. And, I have to say in my own journey, like I'm doing so many things right now with my own gut health, just wanting to optimize everywhere that I can. And it's very, very empowering for me, just as a student in this space, to learn from these types of opportunities, because I start connecting more of my own dots. After I did Fixer Female Hormones, like I had so many ideas of things I wanted to try over the last 18 months or so. I have been putting into practice so many of the things that I learned during that event, which has given me so many ahas, and I'm sharing them all the time with our community. But really, once you have a base of knowledge, it's God, like what an opportunity to to actually be able to go through 30 interviews that you've hand curated to give us this education. I mean, I know what it takes to do this research, you know, so this is really, really special, and I'm honored to be part of it, and excited, Trudy, for the role that you're playing in our community and supporting all of us in dealing with our mental health and our gut health and, you know, everything in between. And I hope everyone will sign up.
Yes, and I've got a quick question for you. When I interviewed you, you had just had your fecal microbiota transplant, and you were going to do some testing, and I know you're still going to be doing some follow-up testing. But what I didn't ask you, and I wish I had, was how did you feel afterwards? Did you feel any different? Did you?
Oh my God. Well, the feeling that I had after did not stay as pronounced. But the number one thing that I noticed is my sleep was out of this world, so awesome, and I didn't need as much. That was the most profound thing that happened for me.
Wow.
Right after, yeah, when it was like super, super potent in my system, it really affected my sleep. And, you know, that was really telling for me, like I wouldn't connect gut health so profoundly to sleep, you know? And I think there's a lot of ways, and I think science is still connecting the dots on a lot of this. I think that we're going to be surprised over the next 10 years to learn what kinds of things are actually affected by our gut health. I can tell you that there's a lot of research showing how it affects athletic performance. You know, some of the best athletes in the world have the most biodiversity in their gut, you know? So it's an interesting time in science. Just as you said, we have 10 years of research, you know, that's all new stuff. I mean, we're going into, you know, 10 more. Just think that like 50 years ago, this was like a blank slate. Like this knowledge didn't even exist. My heart goes out to my sisters who lived during that time. You know, I get emails from women who are in their 70s and 80s who resonate with my story and will say things like, where were you 50 years ago? As if like I wasn't even alive. You know, I'm 44 years old right now. But it's crazy. Like I feel lucky and blessed as a woman that we actually get to learn this stuff as citizens of the world. You know, I am not a nurse practitioner or a doctor, you know, but I've been able to learn this stuff and apply it to my life just as like average Jane. And, you know, I know that you kind of come from that background too. This wasn't like the career path that you set out on when you were
I know.
years old.
I know. I went back to school. I went back to school to become a nutritionist because I thought this is crazy. You know, I need to learn this stuff. And not everyone has to do that because we've got resources like you provide. But you're right. Having this information is just so valuable. And I wanted to just give my theory on why the fecal microbiota transplant may have helped you.
Yeah.
And it goes to back to what we were just talking about. We make serotonin in the gut. We make GABA in the gut. Both GABA and serotonin help with sleep. And possibly with having this microbiome, this fecal transplant, it affected your serotonin and affected your GABA and may have helped your sleep in that way. So it's amazing. It really is. And it's going to affect different people in different ways. But yeah, I'm glad I got that answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, all of this is like fascinating stuff. And, you know, it's really fun for me to see the women in the community who kind of grappled like I have, and you have, Trudy, with like getting a base of knowledge, and then we have conversations and they're madly connecting the dots. And, you know, I don't care where you're at in this journey. If you find yourself feeling really overwhelmed, like, you know, I don't even know what they're saying right now, we all were there. And if you if you will just commit a little bit of time and focus, because this is your life, this is your quality of life for the rest of your life, you can learn this stuff too. And you can pick up on enough of this to change the trajectory of your life forever. And that's amazing. Like I just got chills even saying that, because my life and the quality of my life and what I enjoy in my life has been forever changed because I really embraced this journey. So
yeah. Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. And I remember once I finished studying nutrition, and I remember going to a conference that Tatis Karazian did. And he's one of the guests on the summit, and he talks a lot about the gut-brain axis. But I remember going to one of his conferences, and he talks so fast, and he's so smart, and he's just a brilliant practitioner. And I remember thinking, phew, 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 okay, got that one. Phew.
Uh-huh.
All the stuff was just going off the top of my head. But I just had to think, well, I'm not ready to hear this right now. I can't get stressed about it. I just need to take in what I can right now. And every time that I heard him after that, something else would sink in. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're not all in the same place in terms of our healing journey. And you will hear what you need to hear. And then you just put the rest aside and you think, well, okay, I'll get to that
Yeah,
later,
we'll come back
because
to that.
otherwise it's just too much. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my initial foray into all of this was working with a neurosurgeon in Nashville who was as brilliant as they come. And he only knew one way to talk about it, and that was complicated science. That's the only way. And I remember like listening to him, just I got that morsel and I got that morsel, and so much of it was just like sliding off of me, but I started picking up little pieces, and over time, you're able to absorb a lot more. But don't put pressure on yourself. Take in what you can and just trust the unfolding of how the path is unfolding for you, and know that you
Yeah.
get the right thing at the right time. And there's a real peace in just allowing things to unfold as they will. But just today, I'm going to show up and engage.
Right. Right.
So yeah, thank you.
And then addressing the amino acid issue right at the beginning, because if you are feeling so overwhelmed by this and it paralyzes you and you can't
Yeah,
do anything, maybe look at low serotonin or look at low GABA, because if you can address that, then the overwhelm goes, you feel at ease, you feel hope, and then you can handle some of the, start to think, okay, I can deal with this. I've got these tools that are going to make me feel a little bit better. So
yeah,
that's where I really like the amino acids, because they give you that hope, they give you a bit of relief, and
yeah,
now you can deal with everything else. So let's not forget, to go back to
yeah.
that.
And I would just recommend everyone get Trudy's book, because she really breaks down, how you go about these different protocols, and will support you in getting a start, of
Yeah,
where do I begin with this. And my gosh, just getting a little bit of relief from some of these issues can be just the boost you need to be
it
able to take
definitely
things to
can.
another level. So thank you so much, Trudy. So nice
Thank
chatting.
you. Thanks for having me today. I always love chatting with you. And thanks again for being on the summit and for your wonderful community.
Yeah, well, everyone go get signed up for Anxiety Summit 5 with Trudy Scott. And we'll be talking about it more, and hopefully hearing more from Trudy too as we get closer and closer. So we'll see everyone.